Hi there, welcome to Camping Secrets. I'm Marky Mark, and today I have got two power packs which I'm going to do a head-to-head comparison with. It's the Bluetti AC180, one of the best power packs around at the moment, and check out our previous full review of this up here in the corner. And then the new kid on the block, the Anker Solix C1000. Now, the reason I'm comparing these two is that they both have similar specifications and they're both at pretty much the same price point. As of today, they are both available for £749 in the UK. And typically, I think that's sort of a leftover from Black Friday, but they're the same price. They've got pretty similar specs, but some differences, and we're going to go through that. But when it's not Black Friday, the recommended retail price of the Solix C1000 is £999. And when there's no discounts, this is up at £1,099. So £100 more expensive, but at the moment they're exactly the same price. Anyhow, check the links in the description below if you're interested in checking the latest price out. Right, I'm gonna basically go through the spec sheet, do a few tests just to show the performance directly. We'll look at things like capacity, charge time, power output, noise, the smartphone app, and things like that. But before we do that, let's just talk about a few of the things that are the same between these two. As I said, the price is the same at the moment. Also, the warranty. They both get offered with a 5-year warranty, which is fantastic. They both use lithium iron phosphate batteries, so that gives a really long lifetime, well over 3,000 cycles to get to 80% capacity, which, you know, equates to well over 10 years, even using it fully discharging every day. And for most camping applications, that isn't something you're going to be doing. If you're camping with these things, you're probably going to use them once a week or at most. I know that's certainly what I use them. So, you know, lifetime of these things is not a problem. They're going to last 20, 30 years if you're only using occasionally. Other thing that's similar between them, well, the same between them, is uninterrupted power supply. They both have a 20 millisecond switch over, so you can run these as an uninterrupted power supply, a UPS. For instance, if you've got a CPAP machine or other medical equipment that you want a guaranteed source of power, you can plug this into the mains, then into your machine or a computer or something that you don't want to ever power down. Then if there's a mains shut off, this will switch to battery power and carry on your appliance. And it switches, they both switch in 20 milliseconds. So basically, this will keep your computer running. I've tested this before and I'm not gonna do that again. Okay, so they're the main things that are the same between these, but let's move on to the testing. Let's dig into it. So the first thing that you'll see is that the dimensions are a bit different between these. The Anker device is smaller and quite considerably smaller and lighter. It's only 12 kilograms. This one's 16, and it is a noticeable difference between them. But it's the size that's the real clincher there for Anker, I think. You know, it's about 15 inches by 8 by 10.5, and this one's 13 across by 10 by 12.5. So it is bigger. You know, you can see it's noticeably higher and it's noticeably deeper. Width is about the same, I would say. So if I just put this up on top, yeah, you can see the width is fairly similar, I would say. This one has extruded handles, the Anker. By that I mean they stick out a bit, whereas the handles on the Bluetti are sort of more integrated. I don't really have a preference there, but perhaps the Anker takes up a little more room than it needs to if it had some other way of doing the handles, but you know, not a problem. Let's talk about out and out differences, so unique features that each of these have. And there's not many. They share very similar sort of outputs and inputs. but there are a couple of noticeable differences. First, the Anker. This has on the side an expansion port. So that means you can buy an expansion battery, and it's not actually out yet in the UK, but it will be this year, I believe. And that expansion battery will enable you to double the storage capacity of this C1000 without having to buy another whole power station. So that's a real good benefit, I think, having that capability for expansion. The Bluetti doesn't have that. So that's a definite point to the Anker. And considering the size difference and this being so much smaller, I do think that is a major selling point of the Anker. The Bluetti doesn't have anything quite so game-changing as that, but it does have wireless charge capability on the top. That is a Bluetti sort of, not a trademark, but it's one of the noticeable things that they do. And it's just great that you can just pop your phone on the top there and it will charge. I would say they're the main unique selling points of each. Right, let's get onto the speeds and feeds. Right, let's get these turned on. Both of them pretty similar, just a long press of the button. This one's interesting, the Anker, you press it once and then press it again. So one and then in, and they'll turn on. In terms of screens, I do prefer the Bluetti. It's got a clearer sort of indication of power in, power out. Just a smaller sort of central capacity, whereas the Anker is all about the remaining capacity. And when you're charging, discharging, the information and the time remaining is in really small font. It's difficult to see. So in terms of display, I have a personal preference for the Bluetti, but the Anker is serviceable. Right, let's just go through the front panels. Let's look at the Bluetti first. What have you got on here? Well, you've got a DC output, and so has the Anker. You've got a single USB-C output, and the Anker has two of those. So the Bluetti is 100 watts, and the Anker has a 100 watt and a 30 watt. Now, you know, I would prefer to see two 100 watts on the Anker, seeing as it's got two ports, but I'd prefer to have two ports than one, and the Bluetti's only got one. So that's another sort of win for the Anker, I would say. In terms of USB-A's, then the Bluetti wins. It's got four of those, and they are the higher 3 amp versions. And the Anker only has two USB-A outputs, and they are lower power as well, around the 12 watt, whereas the Bluetti has four, and both 15 watts. Now, what about AC outputs? And for me, AC outputs are what these things are all about. I mean, it's what they've got an inverter in them, and you want to be able to power decent equipment, mains powered equipment. The Bluetti gives you two AC outputs, but the Anker gives you a whopping 4. And for me, this is again a real game changer with the Anker. It's a smaller device, but it has more AC outputs. A definite winner for the Anker. What about inputs? Obviously, both of these can be charged from mains. So you've got the mains input there with the Anker, and you've got, where is it? Mains input here for the Bluetti. So neither of these needs an external power brick. You just plug your kettle lead directly in and directly in. So that's nice. Bluetti used to have an external power brick, and I was not a fan of that on the EB70 and some of the, you know, the AC200 Max, for instance. But I'm really glad to see that they've moved to this internal power supply arrangement, which is just much more practical. They've both got capability for car charging and solar charging. So the Anker uses an XT60 connector here, and then that can connect to, you know, it's a fairly standardized connector that, and obviously that can connect to a solar panel. This will take 600 watts of solar, and the Bluetti is 500 watts. So if you're interested in maximizing solar charging, then the Anker slightly wins and will charge a little bit faster if you've got the sunlight, obviously. For DC input, the Bluetti has this adapter socket here, and it ships with leads with MC4 connectors for your solar panel, and that is a standard as well. So we don't have any problems with either of these in terms of connectors. For example, Jackery are famous for using really, unusual connectors, which sort of, they try to bind you into using their solar panels with their power packs. You don't really get that problem with Anker and Bluetti, but this input here is used for solar and for the car charging. So in terms of power and capacity, let's start with the Anker. So these are both 1.8 kilowatts output power. So that is the steady state power. So they're identical in terms of that nameplate output power. Where they differ a bit, and we'll test this in a minute, is the surge power. The Anker can surge up to 2.4 kilowatts and the Bluetti up to 2.7 kilowatts. And that does make a difference for some appliances. I've got a kettle that's 2.6 kilowatts, and we're going to test it on both of these and see if there's a difference in powering that. Capacity is also fairly close. The Anker is 1056 watt hours of nameplate capacity. Let's get that right. It's nameplate capacity. That's what the manufacturer says it's got. Of course, you've got all the efficiency, and that comes into it as well, and we'll have a look at that. So there's a difference between the nameplate capacity and what you actually can extract from the battery. But anyway, the nameplate capacity is 1056 watt hours for the Anker, and it's 1152 watt hours for the Bluetti. So slightly more, maybe 100 watt hours more, but our previous testing did show that this was not as efficient as this. So actually, my guess is you'll get more power out of the Anker, even though it's got less nameplate capacity, because it's more efficient. But we're going to test that. One trick that they've both got is the ability to adjust the output voltage to power higher power elements, inductive loads. Anker call that technology surge pad, and Bluetti call it powerlifting mode. And I have shown that it is useful. So where other power stations would trip out when you're powering a high power load, these two sort of adjust the voltage that they deliver to still operate that item. And that can be really useful, If you've got, say, a kettle which is above what you think you could power with this, it can adjust that voltage to enable it to power. But they both have that technology. So again, I should have mentioned it in the similarities section, but they both have that, and that is a good thing. In terms of input power from the mains for charging these up, it's pretty similar. Although in my initial testing, I did see that the Anker was quite a lot faster, but I think I didn't have maximum power enabled on the Bluetti. This one charged from 0 to 100% in about an hour and 2 minutes. This one took about 90 minutes, but I think it was in, as I say, a sort of softer ramp up mode and took longer. This has a maximum input power of 1.3 kilowatts, and this is 1.44, so slightly higher. So in theory, this should be able to charge as quick as this one. We'll have a look at this in a bit. It could be an app setting that I saw. Either way, these both have the capability of charging from 0 to 100% in about an hour, which is at the top of the tree in terms of charge time. So you're not going to have a problem. Right, I'm really interested in the fan noise of these two. So we're going to go and power up a toaster now with both and have a listen to the sound. I've got my trusty inductive load of the toaster here. It's about 1.6 kilowatts in total. Right, let's activate the AC. So I'm going to do the same test with both and then hold my microphone up to the fan for both so we can do a direct comparison. Then I'll flick through the videos and you can be the judge of which is loudest. And I'll give you my subjective opinion as well. Right, let's do the Bluetti first. As we've got 1.7 kilowatts of output power here. Fans are starting. Toaster's working nicely. It's the Bluetti working. 1.7 kilowatts. Now to me, that is not that loud. It's pretty good. There is fan noise, but it's acceptable. It's driving a lot of power, this. So let's just do that again. Right, let's switch to the Anker. .63 kilowatts. Here it's ramping, it keeps going, it keeps ramping. Now this has got the new firmware on it, which is meant to help with the fan noise. Still ramping up. I'd say the Anker is louder, but since that firmware upgrade, and check out my video here where I show the impact of that firmware upgrade, it's not as loud as it was. It is louder than the Bluetti, I would say, subjectively, but considering this is powering 1.6 kilowatts, I don't think it's a deal breaker. I thought it would be louder, but actually the comparison, it is louder than the Bluetti, but not by that much. I don't think it's a deal breaker. All right, let's move on. All right, I've got my trusty 2.6 kilowatt kettle here. Now, I've tested on the Anker in my previous video and it tripped it out. Let's just do it again. So let's turn on that kettle. Tripped out. So that kettle will not run on this. So it's unable to do that adjustment of the voltage, the surge pad for this 2.6 kilowatt kettle. Where the Anker is good is that when it does trip, it resets itself and is available to drive something else very quickly. And I think that is a good feature. Let's move that kettle over now to the Bluetti and try again. You can see now that that kettle is running. But it has limited the power to 1.7 kilowatts. So it doesn't surge up to 2.7 and keep it there, but it adjusts the voltage to enable that kettle to boil. So that is boiling. This one doesn't. So that's a clear win in terms of the surge technology, I think, for the Bluetti. While that's running, I think it's a good time to look at the smartphone apps. So let's just record my screen here. Let's go to the Bluetti app first. We can see my device here. You can see we're drawing 1.7 kilowatts from the kettle, 41%. It clearly shows the input and output. We've got the power flex enabled. You can activate DC and AC. Now I do like the Bluetti app because it does give you control over quite a lot of stuff. You know, you've got eco modes, you've got the power lifting, you can change the charging. So let's change that to turbo mode. And we can do a 0 to 100% check. You can check the firmware. So we have got firmware upgrades. Let's do some of these now. Stop that. Get the firmware upgraded. So that's the processor. And the battery management system. Check update, upgrade that. What else have we got in the app? User manuals, which is quite nice. Got user manuals in the app. And actually Bluetti do send you a paper manual, but Anker don't. Got that in eco mode, I don't want that. Advanced settings. Check alarms in the app, nothing on at the moment. Okay, the app's pretty good. Now if we move to the Anker app. So now we're just logging into the Anker C1000. And there we can see 91%. It's very similar capability to the Bluetti, but I'd say a little less. Got the current latest version of firmware. Very similar set of features in the app, so I'd say it's pretty similar. I've got two halogen heaters here, which I can run the identical heaters, and I can run them both with 2 bars, which is around 800 watts. I'm going to power these from 100% down to 0% and see which one lasts the longest. Now on paper, the Bluetti should win this. It's got 1,152 watt hours of capacity. The Anker has only got 1,056, about 100 watt hours less. But I think this could be quite interesting because of the difference in efficiency that I've measured before. Right, so let's plug in. And I'm going to set a stopwatch, and then we will just film stopwatch reset. Okay, so the Bluetti there, 730 watts, and the Anker is 713. You know, it's pretty close. They're both running 2 bars on the heater. Not going to get the power exact, but that is pretty close. I'm going to leave these running. We've got the 2 bars, about 730 watts. It's saying about an hour and a half each. I'm interested to know which one lasts the longest. 81%, 82%. Bluetti saying 1.2 hours left. Anker saying 1.1. So Bluetti ahead in terms of time. Anker in terms of percentage. It's going to be close. So we're down to about 50% now, and the Bluetti is slightly ahead now in terms of percentage, 53%, and the Anker at 52%. And it's saying 0.7 hours remaining on the Anker and 0.8 hours remaining on the Bluetti. So it's neck and neck. What I'm going to do now is swap the heaters over because I think this one's drawing a little more power than this one. So I'll just swap the power units around, but first let's just turn these off. Unplug, just so that they get equal time on each heater. Let's plug that in there, that in there, and go again. So I'm glad I did that because I do think there's a small difference in the heaters. So we're still going, we've been going 1 hour and 11 minutes, roughly 700 watts, and it's still neck and neck. The Anker's at 9% left, Bluetti at 11%. This is really exciting, the neck and neck. So this little Anker is basically can last just as long as this one, and this has got more capacity in it. Unbelievable. I actually think the Anker might win now. Very close now. Which will go? I think it could be the Bluetti. Oh, the Anker's gone. The Anker has gone. I don't think the Bluetti's got much longer left. Oh, it's got a red alarm on it. So that's about a minute extra. It's about 2 minutes. And it's gone. Wow, 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 what a test. What a test indeed. Unbelievable. So the Anker lasted about 1 hour, 19.5 minutes, and the Bluetti 1 hour, 24 minutes. So it's about 4.5 minutes longer for the Bluetti. But if you think that this has got 100 watt hours of extra capacity on paper, essentially they worked out at about the same time. You know, this is marginally longer lasting than the Anker, and the Anker's so much smaller. It's just more efficient. And so to me, this is a win for the Anker, even though it didn't last quite as long, but it is so good for the size of power pack. Unbelievable result, that. So we've done the discharge test now. They're both at 0%, and now I want to measure their quick charge time. As I said earlier, this has had an update on the battery management system, the Bluetti, and it's really temperamental now. It will ramp up to 1 kilowatt of input power and then drop to 300 watts. Right, let's do the head-to-head. Let's turn them on. I'll just set the stopwatch again. Reset. 1, 2, 3, go. So straight away the Anker is up at 900 watts. The Bluetti is going up to 600 watts. It's saying a 2 hour charge time. And the Anker is saying 1.3 hours, but that will change. What I was seeing before is that the Bluetti just would not stay above 1 kilowatt, but we'll see now. Okay. So the Anker I've just put on to ultra fast charging. We're now up at 1.3 kilowatts input power. We're already at 5%. The Bluetti is stuck at 650 watts. It's on turbo mode. There's no other settings to change. We're only at 2%. So let's say in 1.9 hours. This is under an hour, 0.9 hours. So the Anker far ahead at the moment of the Bluetti. So there's been a development. The Bluetti is firing at full force. 1400 watts input power, 30%, 0.7 hours remaining. And the Anker is 1.3 kilowatts in, and that's at 34%, 0.6 hours remaining. So actually it's looking pretty equal. Maybe I spoke too soon about that battery management system software upgrade. So we've been going 54 minutes and the Bluetti is at 87%, dropped down to 700 watts, and the Anker is at 96%, 600 watts. So I'm pretty sure the Anker's going to come in at around about an hour, and the Bluetti maybe a bit after that. Bluetti's suddenly gone up to 1300. Really strange. There we go. Just under 1 hour and 1 minute. And the Bluetti is at 94%, but it has got a larger capacity. There we go. That was 1 hour, 8 minutes, I think. 1 hour 7:47 for the Bluetti AC180. Well then, how do I sum this up? We've got the Bluetti AC180. We've got the Anker Solix C1000. Which one's best? Well, actually, this is one of the hardest comparisons I've done. They are both exceptionally good power stations. They're at the top of the game, top of the tree. There's not really any weak points with either. For me, though, it comes down to the size of the Anker, the weight of the Anker. You know, it's 4 kilos less than the Bluetti. You've got 4 AC outputs, only 2 on the Bluetti. For me, that's the clincher. But other than that, they are both pretty comparable. Charge time, just over an hour for both. The Anker was slightly quicker, maybe 4 or 5 minutes quicker. Just over an hour, maybe an hour and a minute, something like that. And this is about an hour and 5 minutes or something. And then on the discharge test, the Bluetti lasted slightly longer with the heaters than the Anker, but pretty close again, only 4 or 5 minutes in that, running the heater test. So the capacity, the usable capacity is very, very similar between these two. So I wouldn't worry too much that this has got 100 extra watt hours. In the real world, it doesn't really translate into too much. Apps are fairly similar, the smartphone app. I do prefer the screen on the Bluetti. And remember that the Bluetti was able to boil my kettle, the 2.6 kilowatt kettle. The Anker couldn't, it tripped out. So this does have a little bit more headroom at the top end with the powerlifting mode. I've not really had the surge pad provide too much useful extra sort of flexibility compared with the Bluetti. Bluetti's got the wireless charging on top. I don't really use that. So for me, my decision, I think the Anker slightly pips it for the reasons I had mentioned, but these really are two excellent power stations. You get the 5-year warranty on both. You've got the uninterrupted power supply, 20 millisecond switching on both. And one extra thing on the Anker is the expandable battery, and the Bluetti hasn't got that. So actually now I remembered that, coupled with the size, coupled with the 4 outputs, I'm going to put the Anker slightly ahead, but I don't think you should have any qualms about getting any of these power packs. Anyway, I think that's my conclusion. Anker for me, just both brilliant. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to us. We'll be doing plenty more videos, reviewing gear, going camping, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for watching. I've been Marky Mark. Bye for now.